We're going to proceed with a discussion of the thorax in our continuing discussion of gross anatomy. And what we will cover is first the chest wall, and the only portion of the chest wall that we'll spend time on is the breast because of its clinical relevance. Then we'll talk about the lungs and pleura, and as we will continue to do, talk about the embryonic development of those organs as we talk about the adult organ. And then we'll turn our attention to the heart and talk about the adult heart, the embryonic development of the heart, and of course the abnormalities in development that lead to congenital heart disease. And we'll talk about the changes in circulation comparing prenatal with postnatal circulation. We'll then cover the remainder of the thoracic contents in the mediastinum, and then we will review all of the thorax using CT scans as our method of review. So let's start with the breast. There are two major points that I want to cover on this slide. The first is seen in this sagittal view of the breast in the lower right portion of the diagram. So what we're looking at here in this sagittal section is this line would represent the skin covering the breast. This is the rib cage of the chest wall covered by muscle. This would be the pectoralis major muscle. And then that thin bluish line that we see there is the deep fascia covering that muscle. So between that deep fascia and the skin, everything in between would, by definition, be superficial fascia. So we see, therefore, that the breast is entirely within the superficial fascia. Now, throughout the body, superficial fascia contains fat, and so in the region of the breast, we have a substantial amount of fat here in the superficial fascia. But also in the breast, we have the mammary gland and its ducts, all of both the secretory and ductal elements of the mammary gland. So what we refer to collectively as the breast is a combination of the mammary gland and the surrounding fat of the superficial fascia. Now, traversing the superficial fascia, running from the underlying deep fascia to the overlying breast, we have a series of thickenings of connective tissue that are seen throughout the region here. These thickenings of connective tissue are called the suspensory ligaments of the breast, or Cooper's ligaments. These are thickenings of collagenous connective tissue that run from the deep fascia to the overlying skin. And in doing so, they are basically dividing up the superficial fascia into many little compartments, each compartment bounded by these suspensory ligaments. And of course, this is in 3 dimensions. So you can think of the breast as the region of the breast containing many, many little rooms, with the boundaries of the rooms being the walls of the rooms being the suspensory ligaments. And inserted into these rooms, or into these spaces between the suspensory ligament, are the elements of the breast, of the mammary gland, as well as the globules of fat. The reason that's important is that means that if you develop a space-taking lesion in the breast, a tumor in the breast, as that space-taking lesion expands, it will push up against the surrounding suspensory ligaments, push against the walls of this little room that the tumor is inside of. As it pushes against those suspensory ligaments, because the ligaments are non-elastic, they're collagenous, they're not elastic, so they won't stretch. So as you push against it, it distorts the ligament. And in distorting the ligament, since it can't stretch, that means the two ends of the ligament will get drawn toward one another. However, because on the deep side, that ligament is attached to the deep fascia, which is fused with the underlying muscle, that end of the ligaments can't move. On the other hand, the superficial end of that ligament is attached to the skin, so that can move. So a distortion of the ligament with the pulling toward one another of the two ends of the ligament will result in a pulling in, or a dimpling of the skin where that ligament is attached. So as this tumor gets enlarged, we see this characteristic dimpling on the surface of the breast, which is a result of the in-pulling of the Cooper's ligaments. Also, that tumor, the presence of the tumor in the breast tends to interfere with lymphatic drainage, and so you get an accumulation of fluid or edema in the breast. So we have, at the same time, the edema pushing the skin of the breast outward, while the Cooper's ligaments, wherever they're attached to the skin, pulling inward. So we have these alternating out and in regions. So you have this, what's called the orange peel effect that is seen with advanced breast cancer. But it's because you have these Cooper's ligaments that are attached to the skin that are being distorted, that's why that occurs. The other important, clinically important issue relating to the breast, again relating to carcinoma of the breast, is lymphatic drainage. Carcinoma of the breast tends to metastasize by way of lymphatics, so we need to know what the lymphatic pathways are from the breast. And there are two major lymphatic pathways, one for the lateral portion of the breast and one for the medial portion of the breast, but not lateral and medial halves, but rather the lateral portion is more than half. And if we divide the breast with a line something like that, where the lateral portion includes all of the nipple and areola region, then we can say that that lateral portion of the breast has its lymphatic drainage going toward the axillary lymph nodes. And now this is the region of the breast that is the most common site, primary site for carcinoma of the breast, and so therefore the most common pathway for lymphatic drainage or metastasis of these tumors is toward the axillary lymph nodes. And that's why axillary lymph node biopsy is a critical element of the staging of breast cancer, because that's the direction to which you would expect the tumor to metastasize. And of course, once having gone through the axillary lymph nodes from one set of axillary lymph nodes to the other, it eventually would get into the axillary trunk and then into the subclavian trunk and then eventually into the venous system. And if the tumor, of course, gets to the venous system, from then it can metastasize throughout the body. The medial portion of the breast, however, drains in a different direction. The medial portion of the breast drains toward a series of nodes that are positioned behind the costal cartilages right alongside the sternum. So those nodes are called either parasternal nodes, or they're also called internal thoracic nodes, since they're running right along with the internal thoracic artery and vein. And then those nodes will eventually drain to the mediastinal trunk, and again, it'll eventually get back to the venous system. However, very importantly, we recognize that the medial side of the other breast is draining to a set of parasternal nodes, which would be found across the midline over here. And the important point is that the parasternal nodes on the right side and the parasternal nodes on the left side communicate with one another by way of lymphatic channels that cross the midline. And as a result of that, that means we have a direct, continuous lymphatic pathway that goes from the medial portion of one breast to the medial portion of the other breast by way of the lymphatic channels that are crossing the midline, which means that a tumor that has its primary site in this medial portion of the breast, which is a minority of the tumors, but those tumors can metastasize directly to the other breast without having to metastasize first by way of the venous system and the cardiovascular system to other portions of the body. So you can get direct metastasis to the other breast from a medially arising tumor, but not typically from a laterally arising tumor.